Greetings, I am Dr. Andy Johnson. We're talking about writing a literature review. I'm describing the process and the product, and this is the pre-draft. So let me give you some ideas about the process. Know that this is step 2 of the writing process, the pre-drafting process. There are 6 steps. Research, you gather your data. Pre-writing, this is what you do before you get that first draft. You're planning, you're creating outlines, you're looking for that structure. The next step will be the first draft to get those ideas on the paper. A sloppy copy, we'll talk about that in another video. Then you revise, then you edit. Revising is shaping the piece. If you want to mess up your whole process, try to get it right just the first time. If you want to never get anything done on your writing, try to edit and revise as you are writing and drafting. That is one way to ensure that you won't get anything done. So I'm saying don't do that. Remember, academic writing, different from creative writing. You are moving information from point A, which is your head, to point B, which is out into the world, as efficiently as possible. That means your academic writing must be concise, objective, no personal pronouns, and adjectives. Adjectives are very seldom, very rarely used. Be aware of your adjectives. You want to be objective. You want to let the ideas speak, not you speak. You're letting the ideas speak. It's always good to start your literature review, the whole process, with a question. This guides everything. What's the best way to develop students' vocabulary? That's my question, an example of a question. Therefore, everything I look for, my notes, my journal articles, are related specifically to the question. That does not mean that your question cannot change. Questions often change, but start with a question. And here's an interesting thing. Once I dive into the literature review, it is very common to say, oh, I think I need to be asking this question. So, yes, you start with a question, but allow the question to change. Allow the data, allow the literature to speak to you. Having a good set of notes is essential. See chapter 2 of my book for some ideas there. Shortcuts are long cuts. And I've been writing for 25, 30 years or so. I still follow this process. If I'm writing, I must have a good set of notes. That is a starting place, especially when you're writing about a topic that is new to you, which if you are doing a literature review, it should be new to you. Remember, we want to let the literature speak, not us, but the literature is going to speak to us and the audience. So here is the beginning. You want to find a structure. A structure makes it easier to read for the reader. You have your headings and subheadings and they can see the structure. It also makes it easier to write. It's a scaffold. So yes, structure, looking for that structure, and we'll talk about that in a minute, creates a more readable final draft, but it also makes writing more efficient and more effective. So structure arises from your notes. Now you may have a good idea of the structure of your literature review, the headings, the subheadings, where you want to go with that, but allow, again, your data to speak. Allow the literature to speak. As you are looking at your notes, the structure arises. Print out your notes. That is step 1. I recommend single-sided. 10-point font is what I use, so I can see a lot of information on the page. I can put my notes in front of me and I can visually see a lot of stuff. Single-sided. I always highlight so I can see the journal articles. And if I have subheadings within the notes, I will underline that so I can begin to see the structure. But I want to see the title of my articles. So you can see the title of each of the journal articles I read, This is one I did on critical race theory. You can see the journal articles and my notes. Now, when I'm taking notes, you notice a lot of these red lines. Yes, I do not worry about spelling. I'm reading it, and I actually take written notes first and I type them up. And I'm typing them as quick as I can to get that information on the page. Shortcuts are always long cuts. And it may seem like a lot of work to do. You read your articles and I take notes as I'm reading, and my handwriting is horrible, and then I type it into the computer. That process of moving from written notes to typed notes helps me understand and process the information at deeper levels to understand what I'm reading. So print out your notes. Step 2, you're looking for groups or similar ideas or similar concepts, related ideas. Related ideas. Now, this does not mean that you're stuck in time. These were my initial concepts. I was doing an article on vocabulary here. These were my initial concepts as I started, as I thought about it. But as I began reviewing my notes, those initial categories evolved, and allow that to happen. Now, as I'm reading my notes, I sometimes use a highlight marker if I'm finding similar ideas. Oh, this is an idea that can go in that group. So a group is a related idea. These are kind of the groups I saw as I began, and eventually, this was my final category on the right. The third step is to create headings on your actual document. So you have your notes printed out and you begin writing on a computer. Create headings and begin to move ideas. Copy and paste your printed notes here or write your printed notes there. Copy and paste. Move them in. Begin moving ideas. And I say begin because, again, headings and subheadings often change. Now, as you're moving ideas into groups, identify where they came from. This enables you, when you actually write, to cite them, to know where the citation came. So as I'm moving them into my notes, here's an example. LA 10, that told me that came from this one. So when I came time to write the article, I didn't have to look back and say, now where did I get that idea? What site should I use for this idea? Use some method as you move the ideas into the correct groups. And you'll see, as you began to consolidate your ideas, you're looking for similar ideas, and maybe more than one author had the similar idea, the same idea. Here are two different authors. You see LA10 and S99. These indicate two different journal articles. So when it comes time to cite it, I know where the idea came from and I can cite it simply. I don't have to go through and hunt my notes. And as I'm moving ideas into groups, I cross out so I know which ideas that I've used before. This makes it much more efficient as I am reading. Use a highlight marker once I begin moving ideas into groups. The last word, and this was just a pre-draft. Again, shortcuts always become long cuts. You want to get your sources. You want to read and take good notes. I always type up my notes before I begin the pre-draft, and then I begin moving my ideas into groups. You can see all this in my book, Academic Writing, Process and Product. And too often, when people talk about academic writing, they only describe the end product. They don't describe the process used to get there. That's like teaching someone how to cook raspberry jelly by just showing them the jar. Here it is. Now go ahead and cook it. No, you need to know the process.